Hi everyone! So I wanted to start making videos about QHHT. And I know that still so many people have questions on it. So I thought, why not just share my experience? And that way you can kind of see how those past lives transferred into my current life. So I went back to 2 past lives in my own session. And one of them, I started off being a young child. I lived in this very large plantation style home. And I could tell that we were very wealthy. We had servants, I'll say in a nice way, in our home. And my parents were just kind of never really around, right? Fairly simple past life. Most past lives that we explore are very simple. So went forward a little bit and I could see, I was probably about a teenager and I had a really deep love for these servants in our home. And I felt a great disdain for my parents because of how they treated these servants. And I didn't like that. I often would go help them. Fast forward a little bit more. I see myself in the back of some kind of cart, being pulled by horses, and I see I'm leaving my house. My parents are kind of sad, but I was of age, and I look over and I see I'm with a man who is my husband. We were leaving to get married. Something in your session is you might recognize somebody, but not by looks, by soul. And I knew that soul was my first husband, and which some of you may know, some of you may not know. When I was 18, married my high school sweetheart. Did not last long. It just wasn't meant to be, okay? I feel like I was 18, just trying to get out of the house, and we just jumped into it way too fast. And when I went back and saw that life, we were married, and then I fast forwarded a little bit more and saw that we had a daughter, but the daughter was probably about 10, and I was on my deathbed. And when I passed, which, by the way, very peaceful, I could go back and actually view my life, completely from the other side. And I realized, oh, I repeated the same patterns in this life that I did in that life. I married the first man that would take me out of my home, and it just wasn't meant to be. He was not my soulmate. So that opened my eyes a little bit. And then my other life I went into. So since I've been a child, and I'm talking 3-4 years old, I've had a vision, the same vision, where I am a middle-aged man. I can tell it's old-timey because I'm like in a suit and I'm just sitting there with my leg propped up, reading a newspaper. And I've always, I guess maybe since I've been able to read, when I could see that vision, I could see it had a headline about New Mexico becoming a state. Forgive me, I forgot what year that was, but early 1900s. So I've always had that same vision. Well, I actually went into that life, and it really wasn't one that I wanted to explore because it just sounded boring, but I went into that, and I'm glad I did. So I immediately went into that scene where I'm reading my newspaper, and then I put it down and I look up and I see my wife in the kitchen doing dishes, womanly duties, whatever. She looks over at me and I can see a lot of sadness in her eyes, a lot of depression. But more importantly than that, I could see Doug's soul in her eyes. I knew that was Doug, which is my husband now. And, I look over in the living room, I see 2 little girls running around in circles playing. I could perceive them as Stella and Vance. Okay. So I went to another day in that life, and that's when it gets hard, because I was not a good father. I was not a good husband. I was very abusive. You know, I'm sure many women back then did all the duties, but my wife did all the duties while I sat back and was very lazy. You know, I worked at what seemed to be like maybe a newspaper company of some sort. I could walk in and see people working on press and writing stories, reporters. I don't know. I think I was just a paper pusher. And I hated my job. So I brought a lot of that anger home with me. And I took it out on my wife and kids. And I can vividly still see the images in my mind from my session, the terror in their eyes from what I was doing to them. Now, everybody experiences these sessions a little differently. You might see things very vividly, like you're watching a TV show, or you might get little bits and clips. For me personally, it was like little clips, you know, but it was enough to know I knew what was going on. And fast forward a little more, my wife left me and took the children and left. And then fast forward a little more, I'm in the hospital, maybe 50s or so, and I die of a heart attack alone. Maybe a nurse or two in the room. That was it. And so how does that fit into this life? Because I'm not abusive, right? I do believe that I had to experience some of that karma in this life, and I won't get into that. But for how it plays into my relationship now, my current marriage is, I'm not abusive, but I can be a little reactive, and Doug, bless his heart, he does so much around this house. He takes care of the dishes. He does a lot of the cleaning. And I think I've internalized a lot that I'm lazy. And I realize I'm not lazy. I have executive dysfunction from ADHD, autism, whatever it may be. However, I'm realizing now that we came back into this life again. We made a soul contract before we came here saying, hey, let's try this again, but let's reverse roles. Maybe you'll be better the other way. Whatever, right? So Doug's the husband, I'm the wife. And Doug's still taking care of those womanly duties. And I realized that I'm just sitting and I need to get my butt up and do more. And that's hard to admit. It's kind of embarrassing to admit that, but none of us are perfect, right? It's not like I don't take care of my children. I've always put their needs first, but it's really helped me to realize, okay, I'm here to do this again and do it right. And I'm going to do it right. I'm going to break not only this life's generational, cycles, but my soul's generational cycles. I'm here to learn and advance because I don't want to live another hard life. I want it to be smooth sailing after this. So yeah, very mundane past lives. I did have another one, but it was very, very, very short and very simple. So I won't get into that one, but it was a really cool experience. Yeah, and I've had some really interesting clients so far. Everybody has, way different stories, but whether they see it, I know I can kind of see it as the practitioner, how it all plays into their life now. Of course, that's up to you as the client to connect the dots in your mind. Like, oh, yeah, right? And some people, they choose to not believe that it was a past life. They may come out of it and go, how do I know my brain didn't just make all that up? And I'm like, you don't know. But I tell you, why would I fantasize my life as a middle-aged man named Frank who abused his family? And not to mention, I've seen that life since I've been a small child. It's just not something I ever talked about because it's kind of weird, right? But I always knew it was a past life, even though I didn't know what reincarnation was then. So yeah, that's my story. If you have any questions, let me know. But I really want to start sharing more on QHHT. I'm so passionate about this, and just being able to help people, help people figure out how to heal themselves, because it's not me healing you, it's you healing you. I'm merely the facilitator in that. And it's a really beautiful experience. And I would love for everybody to experience it at least once. But yeah. All right. Thanks. Something I forgot to mention was, how does the body play into this? So when I went into that session, I was having intense neck and shoulder pain. And I had it for years. But leading up to that session, it was just really bad. And at the end of the session, I was able to learn that I was carrying too much, too much shame, too much guilt from that past life. And the body remembers. I know this wasn't the same body as Frank, but the body, the soul, it just all remembers. And so once I was able to connect those dots, the pain didn't go away because I had to put in the work. The subconscious was like, no, girl, you ain't getting a free ride. You got to put the work in. And I put the work in. I've actively tried to do more around the house. I've actively tried to be generally more positive. And yeah, I don't have neck and shoulder pain anymore. I might have a little ache and pain here and there. I mean, hello, we're in our 30s. But yeah, it's amazing. The body's very metaphorical. I mean, everything can translate to something. And these sessions are really great tools to help you learn, especially when you're someone who might have gone to the doctor, many doctors, specialists. You can't figure out what is going on. No doctor can figure out what is going on, because it may not be something physical that's easy to see. It could be something that's carried on from another time. Maybe even this life. Maybe it's something subconsciously consciously that you're not aware of, but subconsciously you are. But for some reason, we just can't get the conscious mind and the subconscious mind to connect, and that's what QHHT is helping people do, is connect those two. So I just wanted to add that on. Okay.